100. 55. 100. 99. 180. For that. Cheers. 131. Frozen. 1, 2, 1. 57. 100. 48. Oh. Yeah, and 2. Good down, son. Does good. 60. Oh, 28. Wow. 100. 140. Put that some. Oh, no, 60. 90. 100. 60. 58. 93. 98. 70. Oh, what a snatch. In 3. Right. 95. 60. 60. 134. 59. 83. One, 3, 9. 58. 94. 78. 40. Oh, Graham. 38, 48, 52. Yeah, and 3. Go down there. 100. 56. 180.
That's man. No, that's it. I'm not yet. Hold on. 2 seconds. Sorry. 180. Yeah.
Good darts. 83. 98. 98. 57. In 1.
Good on, man.
Oh. Ton. Oh. 81. 131. 60. 44. 140. 90. 100.
Oh, horrible. 31, 105.
51. 'Oh. 100.
Oh, bastard. 60.
Into.
Good art.
Yes. $140.
Oh, 60.
$42.
Ton.
$60.
$180.
Great that, son. $100.
$93.
77. 82. 102, sorry, check 102, sorry. There I was. Sorry, Kev.
Yeah, and 3.
Sorry about that, Kev.
No bother. I done it earlier, then I saw what's happy days. No bother. $140.
81.
Ton.
41. Under that shit.
Oh, boy. 125.
140.
Oh. 116.
140.
Haha, good dog. No. 16. Great.
67. Miles of fucking.
Oh, really? Fucking hell.
Not so. $23.
Yes, mate, in 3.
$100.
$81.
85.
Oh. 140.
100.
96.
100.
140.
60.
Yeah, in 3, mate.
Well played, mate.
Just great, lad.
Dreadful. Dreadful, dreadful.
Mate, wasn't my greatest performance, was it?
No, well done, mate.
Ready whenever.
Ready, man?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All the best, bud.
All that.
$140.
60.
Oh, come on. 22.
59.
55.
80.
58.
Come on. 140.
'Come on, man. 57.
130.
99.
Game shot in one. Come on. 99.
180.
60.
60.
60.
57.
42.
83.
59.
93.
41.
2, mate. 85.
Come on. 140.
59.
135.
125.
140. Come on.
85.
70.
59.
Game shot in one. Come on. 180.
134.
140.
125.
65.
100.
96.
60.
16.
Oh, come on, man. 62.
No score.
Yeah, M1, mate. $60.
Come on. 100.
174.
Come on. 140.
60.
Come on. 140.
93.
57.
Yeah, I'm free, mate.
Come on. 140.
£140.
96.
£180.
Come on. 133.
Oh, well done. 45.
Come on. Game in 3.
Wagons up.
Come on.
£97.
140.
£59.
60.
£60.
134.
85.
34. 78.
100.
Come on. Game in 3.
That.
Come on. 140.
57.
96.
140.
59.
100.
96.
140.
45.
44.
Oh, Leighton. 33.
Yeah, and one, mate. 100.
Come on. 177.
140.
Come on. 134.
140.
Come on. 174. Come on.
96.
Come on. Get him. Game in 1.
Is that?
Come on. Come on. 140.
140.
Come on. 100.
140.
Come on. 140.
100.
97.
43.
Get it. Come on. Game in 1.
Yeah, well done, mate.
Absolutely awesome game, bud. That was quality.
Good luck in the final, mate.
Cheers, bud. Thank you. Cheers, buddy. Thank you very much.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers. Bye.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Northeast Darts TV. I'm your host, Carl Redden, and I'm going to be guiding you through this very, very, very exciting final. It's the isolation final between Supermac Kevin McDine and Leighton Boom Boom Bennett. What a match in prospect we've got. The players are just putting their finishing touches on their practice, and it's Kevin who's won the bull prior to going live. Kevin McDine against Leighton Bennett, two thoroughbreds of the darting game.
Alright, Leighton, lad.
All that's okay, Kev.
I'm good, mate. All the best.
It's game on Kevin's darts.
Ooh. 85.
Quick adjustment from the 5 in the first start with a great second treble.
60.
And in what's been a scorching day in the northeast, we've got two players in red hot form coming into this. This is going to be a cracker. It's a race to 7, everybody. And already McDine finding the lipstick.
180.
A 180 with his second visit of the game. Fantastic. That is the standard that these two players will be setting
100.
throughout. Kevin McDine, of course, is walk on music, fog on the town. We've not seen much fog
29.
in the air today across the country. Should have been coming on to a bit of Dennis Ovens. The heat is on. Great darts there. 137 from Leighton to keep himself in this one. Neck and neck. 207 plays 204. McDine at the board.
$57.
A trebleless visit gives Leighton a chance to break early.
96.
Kev will be hoping he's got 6 darts at this 150. If he can't take it out, that is, because he certainly can. He's got the ability. There's the first treble. Just slid underneath, unfortunately.
Nah, same trouble now. Hold on, 2 seconds. It's 32 left. So
118 scored, 32 remaining.
180.
And Leighton Bennett for a steal, 108 going. He goes the 19s route.
92.
Pressurises the 32, but Kev will have first shot at this. For the opening leg, 2 16s. Lovely marker.
Yeah, 2.
And slides it off the barrel nicely. Takes the opening leg, and it's Leighton's darts in leg 2.
100.
Ton away from Leighton.
$97.
Matching strides early in leg 2. In a field that began with 128
100.
last night. We're down to the final 2. And these two impressive along their way.
$99.
For Kevin McDine in particular, Martin Hennigan was his first victor, who's been on fire on Northeast Darts TV throughout. And Paul Williams was next. Adam Mould, the impressive Adam Mould, Ryan Hogarth and Robbie Green. You don't get much tougher of a draw than that for Kevin McDine. He got through that, and then of course Graham Usher, who's been in fine form, won Tuesday night competition and
88.
reached the semi-finals. 6-4 victory earlier on with an 85 average for Supermac.
137.
Great darts there from Leighton to leave 24. How much pressure will be under coming back? Not a lot after the first start, it would seem, and the second. So all the time in the world for Leighton Bennett to level things up.
Oh, later. 15. 20.
Again, no dramas with that. Missing. He's back for double 2 because Kevin is back on 189.
1-3. 139.
And he's made to think about it now.
2.
And unfortunate, really, that looked in from where I was sat, but Kevin is back for 50 for a steal. 2 16s again.
Yeah, Kevin 2.
Steals it. It's a breaker throw early for Kev. He's 2-0 up against Leighton Bennett, and how will the youngster respond here? Trebles for sure, doubles for door. Prime example there.
134.
1-3-4. McDine rubbing salt in the wounds there with a 2 treble visit.
140.
Great reply from Leighton Bennett there. And as for Leighton, we had Will Rowley, who was first up last night, followed by Danny Kilban, Rhys Griffin, Dave Peacock, who's been playing regular tournaments with North East Darts TV. And a match that went the distance. 180 from McDine. What a performance this is from Kevin.
Come on. 180.
And back-to-back 180s. Right back at ya. 187 plays 181. Composure from Supermac. Taking his time. We know that Leighton Bennett throws really fast. It works for him. Kevin McDine, very fluent as well. Blinking you missed this one.
Come on. 140.
And a regular sound that we've heard from Leighton Bennett throughout this tournament. He's been bang up for this. The come-ons have been frequent because he's winning. He's really up for this tournament.
Oh, that's a terrible dart. Wow. 35.
And Bennett with a chance to pull one back here and get back on throw.
Come on. Gaining 2.
Good out, man. Good leg.
Great reply. 2-1 to Kevin McDine. Leighton Bennett throwing first.
47.
Only 47 gives Kev a squeak early doors here. 101 average from Leighton Bennett and 94 from Supermac. This is live on North East Darts TV. This is the calibre of players that we're getting. Fantastic darts. I hope you're all enjoying it at home.
41.
And Kev has wrestled the throw away early in this fourth leg. Can he build on that momentum?
96.
Come on. 180.
Third 180 of the match. Sorry, fourth 180 of the match. It's 2-all. 180s galore. Four legs played, 4 180s.
$82.
Rounds it off nicely to 200.
97.
But it's Bennett with the advantage again, you would think. He needs a 2 treble visit here to... How will Supermac do here? Lovely first start.
Oh, 80.
And we've seen that twice tonight where it's just straight into the one. Concentration error perhaps.
96.
Well tidied up from Leighton Bennett to come back on 40 if McDine can't take out Shanghai. Lovely first start. Single for the double. For 3-1 advantage.
Ton.
Dragged it low.
Come on. Gaining 3.
What a dart that was. Have you got the minerals, Leighton Bennett? The answer is yes. Double 10 with that last dart. We've got a level game. 96 average, place 94. The averages, you can't split them. The scoreline, you can't split them. Fifth leg, it's Kev's dart.
Oh, 41.
And both players seem to be struggling on their opening visits when they're thrown.
92.
Kevin McDine, a player I've known personally for 15 years. I was his lucky driver when he got to the inaugural Grand Slam of Darts
68.
in 2007. Seems a long time ago. I was his lucky driver that night. Will I be his lucky commentator tonight?
40. Come on.
What a journey that was that week. Didn't just qualify for the Grand Slam of Darts, destroyed the field in qualifying, but also went to the semi-final on his TV debut. What a week that was. Fond memories.
99.
Leighton Bennett, of course. The early stages of making his own memories, and many a player, the likes of Phil the Power Taylor, is touting him to be a world champion within 5 years. And we all know how difficult that is from MVG's point of view. It took him a while to adjust to the big boys, but Leighton Bennett certainly has the talent to go to the very top.
65.
And we've got him right here, folks, on North East Darts TV. What a pleasure and a privilege this is to commentate on Leighton Bennett. Now a sloppy leg from Kevin here, and it's 105. And he's got time on his side, Bennett, to lead for the first time in the match.
65.
40 when he comes back, but how much pressure will he be under?
$140.
Nice 140 from Kev. Keeps Leighton honest.
Come on. Gaining 2.
Double 10 once again. Leighton Bennett. 1-3-2 finish in the semi-final. A classy bull double 16 finish and a 10 darter with a 98 average against Andy Aspinall. Both players incidentally won 6-4 through to this final.
99.
And Leighton maintaining them kind of averages. Kev has upped his average from 85 to 89, but he's going to have to keep going and upping it further if he's going to win this one. 3-2 in a race to 7.
60.
$96.
McDine's best effort at the World Championships was 2010 when he reached the last 16. The UK Open, he also reached the last 16 in that year. And quarter-finalist at the World Match Play in Blackpool in 2008, sandwiched in between his debut at the Grand Slam. And I remember that night when he beat Adrian Lewis with a very accomplished performance.
58.
Leighton holding the throw at the midpoint of leg number 6, 2-4-8, 3-5-5 for McDine.
100.
Nothing between them here.
Come on. 140.
140 from Bennett. Another come on. He's really, really up for this tournament. It's great to see the youngsters with so much passion.
$45.
Yeah, maybe overthinking it slightly as Super Mac here, because he's had 2 legs of switching off slightly, where Bennett has really rallied from 2-0 down. This is for 4 legs on the spin.
84.
Sets himself up beautifully with a 1 darter when he returns, and he will return. With Kev back on 210. Relying on misses though, and it worked early doors, but
180.
Bennett has switched on with his double finishing.
Oh, Leighton. Nice score.
Can McDine take this? 92 for a level game.
$84.
And Kev
Come on. Game
be
of 1.
really disappointed with that. He had 2 chances after a superb first start, but Bennett tidied up nicely. He's got the advantage. 4-2, 4 legs on the spin. 91.47 takes 88.33. And you feel if McDine's going to win this match, he's going to have to up his average by 10. Because Bennett is playing very well right now.
1-2-1.
Great start from Kev. That'll ease the nerves and ease the pressure of losing 4 legs on the spin. But right on his heels is Bennett with a 135. Leighton Bennett, although he's only been playing for 2 years really on the tour, fantastic to say the age he is.
That's great, Arthur. 28.
The 2019 BDO World Youth Champion, but also on the tour, amazingly, reached the final in Luxembourg, a semi-finalist at the Welsh, French and German Opens to book his place by right of the O2 Indigo. And he'll learn from that experience in the next few years, where it didn't work out for him on that occasion at the Worlds, but certainly his time will come.
59.
A leg you feel that Kev must win here, because 5-2 down is a tough ask, but 4-3 and he's right back in this one.
$44.
Only 44 from Kev.
59.
Not capitalised or punished from Bennett.
Good great last sucker.
Another sloppy one from Kev. He's drifted into the 5-1 way too often for his liking, for his talent.
Wow. 125.
Disappointed with a 125, such is the talent of young Bennett. 83 when he comes back, because Kev 186. Can he leave himself a 1 data?
70.
70, 116.
63. 58.
Close to the bull that. And 116. Kev's got to take this out, you feel. Will he go the 19s route? He certainly will, and he's hit it. He's hit the second one, it looks like.
Yeah, give it 3.
Unbelievable darts there from Kev McDine. 4-3 the scoreline. We've got a game on our hands now, ladies and gentlemen.
100.
Ton away from Bennett. Kev also with a great youth pedigree.
96.
Former England youth player before crossing over to the PDC as a youngster.
100.
My first experience of watching Kevin play was in Horden Catholic Club of all places, where it was a double entry draw and he went through the top and bottom half and won a certain Mr. Graham Stoddard plenty of money
60.
because he backed the youngster. And against all the top brass of the North East, McDine saw them off at a very young age. He's got work to do here because he's 140 behind.
81.
And Bennett, in charge, will look to set this one up.
62.
Needs a 2 treble visit here, you'd think, from Super Mac. 264 and Leighton on 146.
140.
Oh, he's listening. Kevin's listening. 124.
88.
124. You've got to feel like he needs to take this one out, because Bennett on 58, you'd assume he will take this out, given the chance. Wants the ball.
99.
Good effort from Super Mac. But will Bennett punish?
Come on.
A come on from Leighton Bennett. 5-3 up. He's 2 away. Kev with it all to do once again. 86 average and 89. Great standard of darts after 8 legs. And the 9th leg, Super Mac to throw first.
134.
Great darts from Kev. A few technical issues from Leighton. Hope I get him back on air soon.
83.
We can hear him. 83 scored from Bennett. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Great to see.
41.
And I think so far it just hasn't been consistent for Kev. He's had flashes of brilliance. But them
75.
inconsistent darts are really costing him so far. But he's still in with a shout. 5-3 down. A break here and a hold. And then he's got the advantage in the 11th leg.
140.
Superb visit from McDine.
137.
And a great reply from Leighton Bennett. Nothing in this one.
$90.
90. We hear a motorbike in the background there. And Kevin McDine certainly motoring as he looks to get back into this match. The 96 is under immense pressure though with that scoreline from Bennett to leave 68. He's got to take this out again, you feel.
92.
36.
And Kev back for a hold of throw.
Iron 1.
Lands double two, a big double two. 5-4. And it's Leighton Bennett's throw.
93.
If you like what you see, ladies and gentlemen, and you're not already subscribed, please subscribe, hit subscribe, and please follow us on Facebook.
180.
180, third 180 for Super Mac, just at the right time.
58.
Switch on the notifications so you can see which tournaments are coming up, whether that's to play, watch, or do both.
$90.
And let's get us over the 1,000 subscribers as quick as possible.
99.
And the midway point of leg 10, and it's Super Mac who is 20 points ahead plus these, so he's wrestled the throw away from Bennett.
126.
And a great 1-2-6 there. So we've got a game in our hands most certainly here,
41.
as it's Bennett's turn to go missing for a couple of legs. 6 darts from here from Kev. Will he set it up or will he go out at this visit?
47.
He'll be back. But how much pressure will he be under?
60.
Only 60. So Kev, you would think would have time on his hands here to tidy this 58 up. 18 tops.
In 2.
Classy darts there from Kev. And he's really turned it on when he had to. He's upped his average immensely. 5 all. It's a best of 3, ladies and gentlemen, from here. 88 average. There's very little to split them. There's nothing to split them, in fact. Northeast Darts TV, what a mouth-watering final we've had, and they have lived up to every bit of their ability.
60.
And with Kev breaking there, he has the advantage. Should it go the distance in this best of 3? 5 all with the darts.
Come on. 100.
Crucial treble there to remain in the leg there. And Kev finding the lipstick and keeping his darts straight, importantly.
180.
Fourth 180, fourth maximum. at the right time, really turning it on is Super Mac.
59.
173. He's not going to leave himself the madhouse here, is he?
Oh, fuck, what is that? Oh, what is it?
Maybe that was in his back of his mind there.
117.
58.
56 for a 6-5 lead. Trailed 4-2, remember. It's been a topsy-turvy final.
In
Both
2.
players with momentum. And it's McDine who leads again. He's one away. He's on the hill.
60.
And Bennett, how will he respond? He's got to respond now, because if he loses this leg, it's over. And the isolation title will go to McDine. It's been a breath of fresh air to watch as Leighton Bennett over the last 2 days. And Kevin McDine, like I say, we've saw the draw that he's had. Such a tough draw. So if he wins this, it will be a fantastic 2 days accomplishment. Crucial last treble there.
Come on. 140.
Superb darts from Bennett to keep him in this one. 44 behind, but Kev will fancy his chances of winning the leg and the match at this visit if he gets 2 trebles. And he's done exactly that. So Bennett needs a big one here.
140. Come on.
Great game we've got. Unbelievable standard. Super Mac for the match. A 137. Can only pressure it from here.
59.
Comes up dry on the treble department. An 87 for a level game. And a decider.
Oh, nice goal.
Oh, he's bust the 87. What has he done? Super Mac for the match. 78. Wired double 12 on 2. That is so unlucky. And Bennett back for 87.
Come on!
On the ball. We're going the distance, ladies and gentlemen. What classy finishes from busting to recover there after McDine so close on the wire. Rested on the wire with his second and third dart. We've got the decider here. Forget about the averages. This is a one-leg shootout.
131.
1-3-1 away.
140.
Responds with a 140.
Uh, 59.
And after a 140 visit, pressurise that on the 59.
180.
And a third maximum at just the right time from Leighton Boom Boom Bennett. How will Kev respond in this deciding leg? Important last treble 18 there, but Bennett, it's in his hands.
96.
96. And that will do from here, you would imagine. He's going to get first pop at a double. Kev's missed 2 match darts. Leighton Bennett, will he execute at the first visit?
96.
85.
65.
65, and it's 2 missed darts for the match and the championship from both players. Bennett, who relied heavily early doors on double 10, and it's gone astray on that occasion. And 1-2-2 for the match there. Unbelievable effort from Super.
Thanks,
It's a shame there has to be a loser here. They're both winners in my eyes. Fantastic darts.
No score.
And again, 3 missed starts. That's 5 in total from Bennett. And McDine, can he tidy up this 25 and win the championship? 2 fours.
Yeah, and 2.
Game.
Yeah, well done, Cal.
And the match and the championship. Isolation champion. Super Kev, Super Mac, Super Kevin McDine. A 90 average against 87. 7-6 win over Leighton Bennett. Fantastic darts, gentlemen. Fantastic darts. We'll see you all at the weekend, hopefully, where we'll be live again.